Welcome to the Time Capsule Show, where we explore life in the 21st century through the eyes of people just like you and me. I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Monica.
Today we have social studies teacher, Mr. Patrick Turano. Welcome, Mr. Turano. We're so happy to have you.
Thank you for having me, Vanessa and Monica. This is a real pleasure. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm really excited to kind of go down this path with you both today.
It's been certainly a very long time since we last spoke to each other.
How many years do you think it's been?
Me and Monica both graduated from St. John's Preps from, I believe, 2014?
2014, yeah.
Yeah, so it's 7 years,
almost
7, 8?
10 years.
Yeah, I can't believe that. Good Lord.
Wow,
I
I have to say it feels less than that, but I just think that's based on the fact that I've been teaching for now 14 years, that the years kind of get jumbled together, and it's sometimes hard to keep track of them. So I'm actually really surprised it's been that long, honestly.
Definitely. So, if I may ask, can you tell our viewers a bit more about what you do and what inspired to pick your current profession?
Sure. So currently, I am a social studies teacher at St. John's Preparatory School in Astoria, Queens. As I mentioned a moment ago, this is now my, I believe, 14th year teaching there, which again is kind of amazing. It doesn't seem that long, but it's been that long, I guess. Um, and in terms of what I actually teach more specifically, I teach AP World History for both ninth and 10th grade, and I also teach US History and Government for 11th grade, for juniors. I've actually never taught seniors before. That's something that I think I would love to do one day, but I haven't had the opportunity to do yet in terms of economics or US government. But hopefully at some point in my teaching career, I will be given the opportunity to do so. In regards to what inspired me to pick that profession, that's a really good question. Um, I think the easy answer to that is my mother. My mother, who is recently retired, she was a law professor at St. John's Law School for over 40 years. She actually just retired about a year and a half ago. So I grew up in a household where education and teaching was something that was just very at the forefront. I remember times, on random days where I wasn't in school, going with my mother to her job and just kind of sitting in on her classes and watching her, do what she does. And I'm not sure if it necessarily inspired me, but it definitely rubbed off on me. It definitely had an impact on me. And then, when I got to college, I wound up going down to the University of Richmond in Richmond, Virginia, where I studied both history and religious studies. So I was a double major there. Once I declared my major, I think that also kind of just brought me in that direction of education and teaching. I wouldn't say that I was still 100% sure that that's what I wanted to do. But I think by the time I was in my senior year, that seemed like a real strong possibility. And I got an interview at St. John's um, in, I guess it was July, after I graduated back in 2006 from the University of Richmond. And lo and behold, I wound up there, and I've been there ever since. So
Wow.
I know, it's pretty remarkable.
um, so do you still teach U.S. history back in St. John's?
I do, yeah. So currently, right now, I have two classes of AP World for ninth graders, for freshmen. I also teach two sections of AP World History for sophomores, and then I have one section of U.S. History and Government for juniors, for 11th grade.
Wow, I'm sure a lot has changed since we both last been there, for sure.
I mean, yes and no. I think obviously with the current situation involving, the pandemic and
Right, that's true.
COVID-19, this has been a very interesting past year and a half now. I mean, going back to March of 2020, when this kind of all started, it's definitely been very different in terms of just how the teaching profession has worked and just being able to interact and communicate with students. But in terms of the subject matter, the curriculum, I don't think a lot has changed in terms of that per se. But I'm sure that the class overall, in terms of what we're still emphasizing and teaching, is pretty similar to what you and Monica were going through when you were juniors in high school all those many years ago, right?
So, Mr. Toronto, how would you try to explain the teaching situation now compared to like 2019? Like, how do you even do hands-on lessons or like group work? How does that work?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So currently, and for all of this year, going back to September of 2020, we are um, we are in a hybrid model. So basically, what we've done is we've divided the four classes basically in half, and for 1 week at a time, about half of the students are in the building, and then they go home for a week, and the other half of the students will come in the following week, and they kind of alternate back and forth. We do have some students who are fully remote. I have not seen them in person at all this year, which has been very interesting. And back since I would say the beginning of March of this year, 2021, the really nice thing that we've been able to do at our school is that we've actually been able to have much of the senior class in full time. Now, I don't teach seniors myself, but just having them in the building, getting them to kind of finish up their senior year in a more traditional way, I think has been very nice and very rewarding for them. That's unfortunately something that the senior year from 2020 did not get, and I feel very bad for them about that. I think that's something that I'm sure they wish that they had the opportunity to do. So that's been really good in that regard. But yeah, I mean, it's been challenging. I mean, there's no sugarcoating it. It's been a hard year for sure. I still love what I do. I still really enjoy teaching, but I think it really shows the value of being able to interact with students and just people face to face. I mean, again, I would prefer right now to be in a studio with you guys, talking with you face to face if that was actually possible. And it looks like we're getting back to that way of life soon, hopefully sooner rather than later. But yeah, it's been challenging. I think it's been challenging for the adults, for the teachers, for administrators, but it's definitely been challenging for the students, for the teenagers who, they were expecting something very different for their high school career, and unfortunately, it has not probably played out that way for many of them. So, but I think overall the school year has gone well. There have been ups and downs, there have been challenges for sure, but it could have been much worse, I think, than what it has been. So I'm reassured by that for sure.
So, in terms of like the classroom, you said half online, half in person. Are there like plexiglass or like very much like big spaces?
So there's not plexiglass, at least not in my classroom. So at the beginning of the year, back in September, we were told there was basically like a duct tape box on our my classroom floor, and we were told you have to stay in the box, don't get out of the box. And students were 6 feet apart, all in masks. I've been wearing a mask. One thing I've had to do, unfortunately, and I don't like doing this because it's just not how I'm comfortable teaching, but I found myself sitting down a lot more at my desk because, again, I have half my students at home, so I'm Zooming with them. I'm trying to divide my attention back and forth between the two groups, which is hard. And it also doesn't allow me to really walk around because, I have a camera on me and it's stationary. So if I leave the view of the camera and wander off somewhere, the students at home can hear me, but they can't then actually see me. So that took some getting used to at first. It was very strange to kind of be told you have to like stay here and you can't really, do your normal thing. I feel like for me as a teacher, I'm very interactive. I like to walk around. I like to engage, different parts of the classroom. And that's been hard to do, obviously, with all the restrictions. Recently now, because of, CDC guidelines have changed, now students are 3 feet apart. So we've actually had some students come back and we've actually had a couple more students in the classroom, which has been great to see. But it's still obviously not what I would like it to be. I'm really excited for maybe September, where fingers crossed, knock on wood, we're back full time in person. We're not Zooming. Students are not doing the remote thing, because ultimately, I think it's really been, as I said before, it's been really hard on them in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I can imagine. Um, so, Mr. Toronto, if you were pursuing a different path, what would you be pursuing and why would you be pursuing it?
Oh, a different path. Again, I'll probably just go the easy the easy answers for you guys. As I said before, my mother is she was a law professor at St. John's Law School. And before that, she was a practicing attorney just for several years before she, wanted to settle down and have a family. And my father is also an attorney. So I come from also, I have a family of attorneys. That's also been something just, from the very, very young age I've been exposed to and raised within. So if I could say, like, if I went back in time and, after graduating college, teaching didn't seem like something I wanted to do, I think I probably would have at least applied to law school and gone to law school. I have several friends who are lawyers, and, I don't want to necessarily talk about them a lot, but uh, they don't always seem very happy with what they do for a living. So I don't think that that would have been something that I would have really been happy with either. I know that there's a lot of different options in terms of being a lawyer, and what that degree can get you in terms of your job or occupation. But I don't really know. I mean, I just feel like, I know it sounds cliche, but I feel like I was in a way born to be a teacher, born to be an educator. I feel like I connect well with young people. I feel I connect well with, students of a certain age, and it's been really rewarding. I mean, even this year with all of the challenges there's been, I think more days have been overwhelmingly positive than negative. So, but that's probably my cop out answer. I'd probably be an attorney, I guess, just because, both my parents are.
So, you mentioned to me once that you were writing a book. Are you still writing that book? Like, would you consider being an author?
Oh, I mean, how I would answer that is this: like, I I would love to be an author. I love the idea of being an author. I think that would be so amazing. I just find that I don't have the time to dedicate to writing multiple hours a day. It's just not something that at least at this point in my life, have been able to do consistently. I think I have like ideas in my mind about, like, if I was to write a book, what I would want to write about, and how I would go about doing it. But in terms of actually following through and sitting down and doing that, I just don't think I'm at a place in my life where, I mean, again, besides being a full-time teacher, I also have, I have a wife, I have a almost 6-year-old daughter now, so that's just something that really, um, I guess I don't want to say prevents me, but it doesn't allow me to necessarily have the free time to do that. And I also would say that I really enjoy reading more than writing. So if I am spending my time doing something in one of those areas, I would probably choose reading more than sitting down writing. I mean, maybe a year from now, maybe 5 years from now, I'll think differently about that. But yeah, I guess no, no, not at this point in my life would I be planning to write a book or trying to publish something. At least, not right now.
You said you're a big reader. Do you have a specific genre that you enjoy?
I do. It's funny. My father's also a big reader, and we all oftentimes will talk about what we're reading. And he really loves fiction. Like, he's into kind of like detective fiction, that type of stuff. And it's funny because he'll always, make these recommendations for me. Oh, you should read this. You should read that. And I really have no interest in those things. I really enjoy nonfiction history. I mean, it's again, it sounds cliche as the history teacher, but Um, I think there's a reason why I gravitated towards teaching history, social studies, because I just really enjoyed, not only teaching that, but learning more about it, reading more about it, getting different perspectives or viewpoints about a particular event or particular person from history. I just finished, just about a week ago, I finished a book all about a almost outbreak of bubonic plague in the city of San Francisco back in the early 1900s. And I had never heard of that before. Like that was never something I had heard about in school or never read about or seen anything about. So that stuff just really fascinates me. Like the things that that have happened in our country, in our world, that you wouldn't necessarily learn about in a social studies class, in a U.S. history class, but obviously have had huge impacts on the people living then and also just the people who have come after. So yeah, I'm really into kind of history nonfiction in terms of my personal reading as well.
So, we're now at the segment of the show where we like to call past, present, and future, where we'll be exploring three different periods of your life. So, the first one is, how do you see yourself now, and how does it compare to the person you were 5 years ago?
Well, I mean, I think I'm answering this question very specifically because of the COVID pandemic. Right now I'm a person who is kind of like many other people, kind of coming out of lockdown, coming out of a situation where because of circumstances outside of my control or our control, was just being at home a lot more, not being able to see people that I normally would see, whether family, friends, you know, and I think that was very hard. I'm a very social person. I like to spend time with both family and friends. I like to go out. I like to socialize. I like my daughter, who's almost six, to do those things too, to kind of grow up in that type of environment. And for the past year and a half, obviously that's been limited. So in terms of like where I was 5 years ago, and I guess what was I? I guess I was 32 because I'm 37 now. So 32. I was recently married, so that was one thing. I guess I was just a new father back 5 years ago, so just becoming a dad and adjusting to that and kind of getting a sense of what it means to be responsible for the life of a child and all that comes with that, and trying to kind of navigate being a husband, being a father, being a teacher, being a friend, being a son, being all the things that I am. And I think, over the past 5 years, COVID aside, I've really grown into that role as a father a lot more. It's been really amazing to see my daughter grow up, and you know, I would say she's done really well with all of the challenge. I mean, she's currently in kindergarten, and
Aw.
she's starting her educational path in COVID, like having to go to school with a mask, not be able to like hug her friends or play with her friends on the playground, after school. And I was really concerned. I was like, I don't know how she's gonna do. I don't know, how she's gonna be able to get through this. And she's been really remarkable. And she's honestly been an inspiration for me. Like whenever I'm feeling like down or like, this is so hard. I can't believe we're still in this mess that we're in. I'll just see her smiling and just like enjoying life. And I'm like, yep, yep. It's, sometimes it is just like as simple as that, just like, things aren't great right now, but they could be much worse than what they are. And I think, having that perspective of a child who's, who still has so much of her life ahead of her has been really helpful for me at this point in my life, um, with all the things that have been going on, the past year and a half or so with all that. So, and I'm excited to obviously get back to that. I think we're heading in a positive direction, and I'm thrilled. I'm really excited about that for sure.
And then, how do you think things will be for you in the next 5 years?
Yeah. Well, again, I hope we're not wearing masks anymore. That would be nice. Um, I think I'll still be a teacher. I can pretty confidently say that. I think this is a career. This is a lifelong pursuit for me. I currently live in Stamford, Connecticut. I bought my my house with my wife 2 years ago, and we're very happy here. This is our home. We love it here. Even though for me that means my commute down to Astoria, Queens is further than it used to be. Um, that's okay because I still really love the work I do at St. John's, and I obviously still love I love my neighborhood. I love my family and my home. Um, so I think we'll still be here in terms of that. You know, I can fairly confidently say that I'll probably still be at St. John's as a teacher. I mean, again, 5 years is a long time, and who knows, if something was to come up in terms of having an opportunity to teach closer to home and therefore not have to, commute 2 hours, 2.5 hours a day, that's something that I would always consider doing. But again, teaching at St. John's Prep has been my entire teaching life. It's been my entire career. So the the idea to think about moving on from that is scary. It's definitely something that's a little bit nerve wracking and anxiety inducing. But again, as I said, I really enjoy teaching there, and unless something really came up that I thought would be a really good fit for me in terms of making that change or switch, I think I can still see myself, teaching at St. John's for another 5, 10 plus years for sure. So, um, yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. You go back to March of 2020, and you think about, oh, like what would the next 5 years been? It would have been a very different answer than what I'm giving you now. So I guess I'm more used to now thinking like day to day, week to week. It's hard to think about 5 years from now. Who knows what the country, the world will look like in that span of time. So I guess we'll have to wait and see.
That's very true. So you're more like to go with the flow.
I think so, and I think honestly, there came a point in the past year where I was finding myself getting really just frustrated and anxious and just like I don't want to say depressed, but like it was hard and I kept running through my mind these scenarios like, oh, what if, and honestly, we never know. We never know what the future holds. So I've really just tried in the past, 6 months to be really more grounded in terms of the here and now and appreciate what I have and appreciate, everything that I've been able to do up until this point in my life, which has been fantastic. So preparing for the future is important. I'm not saying it's not, but at the same time, you don't only want to be focusing on the future because then you miss out on the things that are important now in the present day. So I've tried to make that adjustment. And I think it's going okay. I think it's going well so far.
You mentioned your daughter, and
Mhm.
seeing that you're also still a teacher. Would you want her to follow the same path, or do you want her to do her own thing?
Um, I want her to do her own thing. I mean, if she came home one day and said, Dad, I know for a fact I want to be a social studies teacher, I would say, fantastic. That's great. The world needs good teachers. We don't have enough of those, unfortunately. At least I don't think so. Um, so I would be very supportive of that. But if she came home and said, it's funny. So right now my daughter is really into dinosaurs. Like she's like obsessed with dinosaurs. So she's convinced that she's going to be an archaeologist, right? That she's going to be, oh no, sorry, a paleontologist. That's it. So she's going to, dig up dinosaur bones. I'm like, that's great. If that's what you want to do, if you want to go into science, if you want to go into that field, fantastic. I want her to do the things that fulfill her, that make her, that make her happy, that inspire her. You hear about it all the time. People who go through their life in a job that they don't enjoy, and it's oh, it's good money, or oh, it's this or that, and it's okay, that's great, but you know 20 years from now, are you going to look back and say it was worth it? And for me, I don't know if I would. I need something that fulfills me and makes me happy. At like if I could look back after a school year of teaching and say, you know what, there were more good days than bad days. For me, that's what I need in my life in terms of a job or a career. So, and for the past 14 years now, I honestly can say that I've been able to say that. So, But yeah, I would love her to forge her own path and figure out those things that makes her happy and fulfilled.
I actually really, really agree. My father actually said something very similar to the what you just said. The way I can relate to what you said. Just looking, I don't want to look back many years ago and regret a decision of what job I want to pursue. My father said, "Do something you want to do and don't follow me," because my father was a cop,
Hmm.
so I don't want to regret my decision because I want to follow him.
Okay. Yeah,
So
I mean that's great. And can I say, Vanessa and Monica, like it is so awesome that you guys are doing this podcast. I mean I'm so genuine about that. When I got that email from you, Monica, like I like literally jumped out of my chair. I was like, I cannot believe that they are doing this, that they are doing a podcast, and this is such a cool thing. Like I think I wrote to you, Monica, when I wrote you back that I love podcasts. Like there's just so much out there in terms of the different genres and different types of mediums you can look into. So just to hear about former students from the school I teach at doing this. Was so exciting for me. So I'm so happy for both of you that and Joerenz and John Ruse that you guys have been able to get together and get this together because it's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome.
I mean, it's been a joy so far, like reconnecting with former teachers, also meeting new people. We haven't met yet, so I think it's a very good form of networking and meeting other people. So
I mean I agree and I wish you guys so much success. I hope this like just takes off and goes in so many maybe directions that you didn't expect it to and um, it's really really cool that you guys are doing this. Fantastic.
thank you very
Yeah,
much.
I got a really long email from you. I'm like, yeah, he's really excited.
I am. I'm like I've been telling all my friends. I'm like I'm going to be on a podcast. Like this is so cool. I mean, maybe that just tells you about something like how not cool I am. If this is like my end all moment in my life that I'm going to be on a podcast with former students, but it's been really fun to talk to you and like I'm really enjoying this. So again, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
So, Mr. Turner, what podcasts do you like to listen to? Because I know you mentioned some, but what are your takeaway points from each podcast that you listen to?
So I guess I have like a couple of areas of podcasts that I kind of gravitate towards more, and unfortunately, there's been some podcasts that have just been like one season or two seasons, and then they just they don't kind of continue on, which is fine because they have a story to tell and they tell their story and it ends and okay, that's great. But in terms of like recurring podcasts that I listen to weekly or season to season. Some of the ones that I really enjoy are like Revisionist History. That's the Malcolm Gladwell podcast that I love so much. I mean, I've read many of his books as well, and I think he's just a super fascinating individual. Just the way that he looks at issues and certain aspects of life is so creative. Like it just, I'm blown away when I hear just the way that like. So for example, he did this whole podcast like a couple of seasons ago about why he hates golf. And I remember I heard the tagline for the podcast. It was like, wait a minute, I love golf. Like, come on, man. Like, how can you hate golf? And then I listened to the podcast, and it was obviously a little bit more complicated than just hating golf. And he went into this whole thing about what was it? Um, Country clubs in Los Angeles and like this tax exemption that they had. It was this whole very complicated thing. And I remember just listening to this podcast for the 30 minutes that it was and just being like completely blown away. And then I remembered I was like the only reason I listened to this in the first place is because he said at the very beginning I hate golf, and that just kind of like sucked me in because I was like I really want to know why he hates golf so much. And honestly, it wasn't even really about that. It was just this whole different approach to thinking about this particular aspect of that of golf overall. So revisionist history is one that I really like. There's a great podcast called Ear Hustle that is produced and made by inmates at San Quentin Prison out in California, and it really kind of gives you a very in-depth look into what prison life is like for people in that prison specifically, but also I just think, in general. And it's really cool because the host of the podcast for the first couple of seasons was an inmate. And then I think it was at the beginning of the third or fourth season. I think they're in their seventh or eighth season now. Um, he was paroled, and he was actually, let out of prison. And now for the past 4 years, he's been doing the podcast from the outside rather than from the inside. And it's been this whole just very different approach and perspective to like that whole like aspect of life and society. So those are just a couple that I really, really enjoy. And I have some, history podcasts that I like to listen to as well. There's a couple of soccer or sports podcasts that I love to as well. So what I try and do is I try and have a number of podcasts where I can fill up my commute each week, but I don't have too many where I'm like running out of time to listen to the episodes and I have all these like episodes backlogged because I think at one point I was trying to listen to like 20 podcasts and I was like, this is too much. No, no, no. I don't have time for 20 podcasts. So I think I'm down to probably 7 or 8 podcasts now. And I think that's probably good for my speed and, where I'm at in my life right now. So, and I can't wait to add your guys' podcast to my regular listening habits.
Well, I really, really appreciate that, Mr. Turano.
Sure, my pleasure.
But I do have to ask. I have been hearing from other students that um, during tests, you like to play music in your classrooms. I don't remember that from. Do you have a favorite
um,
go to music?
yeah, I mean, I think that's something that I'm selective with. I know that I'm someone that I know when I'm doing my own work in terms of preparing a lesson or creating a project or something, or even grading for that matter, that I really love to have music on. It has to be a very certain type of music. I can't just be listening to something upbeat, fast paced, because then I'm not, obviously paying attention and I'm going to be very easily distracted. But um, yeah, I mean, I generally have had a couple of times where I will ask the students, like, would you mind if I put some music on? And I think sometimes the students will look at me like, really? And I'm like, just, we'll give it a try and see what you think. And sometimes it doesn't work. And sometimes the students are say, it's distracting. Can we turn it off? And I'm like, of course, you have, I want to make sure you're in a mindset where you can do your best work, whether we're taking a test or whatever it is. But there have been classes where the students seem to enjoy it. And I think it just maybe allows them to kind of relax a little bit. I mean, I think, you can, I'm sure attest to this, both of you, that high school is stressful,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I remember, all those years ago when I was in high school, it was stressful. And I know probably at that point where I was doing much of my homework and studying for things with music on, even when I was in high school. And I feel like I would have been really kind of impressed if any of my teachers in high school had said, like, let's put on some music during a test. That never happened, and that's fine. I'm not trying to criticize my high school teachers by any means, but it's something that I think can be helpful and rewarding. And doesn't work for everyone, but I've had times where it's worked. It's worked. So
Do you have any favorite like music to help you like ease?
yeah, it's funny. I find sometimes actually where if I listen to a song or a group or a band that doesn't actually speak English, it actually is sometimes more helpful for me because I'm not listening to the words and processing them because I don't necessarily understand them. So there's this Icelandic band called Sigaros, and it's much of the music is very just kind of relaxing and kind of low key. Anyway, I mean they have some upbeat kind of fast paced stuff, but you can kind of create like a Spotify playlist or a playlist or something where you can kind of be a little bit more selective about their songs that are a little bit more subdued and mellow and chill. And I find like for me that works very well because I'm not listening to the lyrics to try and understand what the singer is saying. It just kind of all blends together a little bit easier for me. So, and I've actually played that group for some of my classes, and Some of my students are like, who is this? Like, clearly it's a band they've never heard before. They don't understand the lyrics because they're speaking a different language. They're speaking Icelandic, and I'll tell them like, oh, it's this group, and you should check them out. And then they'll come back a couple weeks later, like, I listened to I listened to a few of their albums, and they're great. So it's also cool just to like have those little insights where I can kind of not only have my students leave each year with knowledge about social studies, but to have them leave with knowledge of other things as well. So whether it's music or anything else, I think that's also kind of a nice thing about being a teacher for sure.
That's kind of a very creative method. I've never, I guess, encountered besides another teacher from St. John's that
Okay.
that does a similar method. But that's a very creative process.
I mean, do you feel like if you're like let's say if you're editing things for the podcast or doing stuff for your work, like do you feel like you listen to music when you're doing that to help you guys relax, or is that something that
Most
doesn't
certainly. I
work for
mean,
you?
whenever I edit the videos itself, I have my headphones on. So, but I always have it in the background regardless. So yes, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I listen to the Hamilton soundtrack.
There you go. Yeah. Well, so whether it's Broadway or some random band from Iceland, there's just so many options out there for music. So
Definitely, music
that's
music always helps.
I
So,
agree. I agree.
Mr. Toronto, what principles do you live your life by?
Um, Principles I live my life by. I think I would say that's hard. Let me see. I think there's three things I would say. Number one, um, listen to people. I found that when I was in the process of getting married, so when I was engaged to my now wife, she made it very clear that she wanted to go to marriage counseling before we got married. And initially I was like, come on, like we don't need to go to like a counselor. Like that's like I had never done therapy or anything. So I was very, very turned off that whole idea. I'm like, we know each other, we're good, we're in love, we'll be fine. But she was like, look, I'm putting my foot down. This is very important to me. So you need to get on board because if not, this is not something that I can kind of work past. So I was like, okay. And I told her, I'm like, I'm doing this for you. And I found that during our 6 to 8 weeks with this counselor, that I really learned how to listen not only to my wife or to my future wife, but just to people in general. And I feel like for me, I've come to think that a lot of problems that people go through in life, both small and big, come down to the either inability or the lack of desire to listen to other people. And I look at our country right now and how divided we are in so many regards, and I don't see people listening. And I see people yelling, and I see people saying, "I'm right, you're wrong." Right? It's this way, it's not that way. If you're not with us, you're against us. And I always ask myself why are we not listening to each other? It's not always as simple as this or that. There's usually some sort of middle ground, gray area where people can kind of come to a compromise, to kind of come to a point where they can at least, hopefully hear one another, listen to one another, and understand why maybe they have such a different opinion or different outlook on life. So that is something that I've really tried to do a much better job of in recent years, just being able to listen to other, and it's sometimes hard to do that because I feel like we live in a society now where you just want to get all these things off your chest and talk and speak and put stuff on social media and just like do all that stuff, but not actually then take the time to listen to what other people have to say. So I think that's a big principle for me. Um, Another thing is just like again, I know it probably sounds very cliche, but just to be kind to people, just to be respectful. Whether it's a simple smile, a good morning, a thank you, those things go a long way. And I think especially now because of how isolated people have become because of just being at home and being remote and just being, living in this kind of COVID reality we're now, been in for a year and a half, that it's really easy to forget that. You know, if you're wearing a mask all the time, oh, well, what's the point of smiling because no one can see it anyway? Or like, what's the point of like acknowledging someone else's presence because, we've just become so isolated in a lot of ways. So just these little acts of kindness can go a long way. I mean, you never know how a smile or a hello or a thank you is going to change someone's demeanor, change someone's day. And I would say usually it's for the better. So that's another principle that I try and live by. Just being kind to people. And I think also just the last thing I would say, the third thing for me is just to try and simplify your life. It's very easy to kind of, and I would say like if going back to your question about how I saw myself 5 years ago, I always felt that I had to be involved in everything. Like I had to always be doing something. Like if I was just like sitting around at home or on my couch, like I was wasting my time. Like why wasn't I out being productive and doing something? And I'm not saying like just, sit on your couch all the time and be lazy, but having those moments for yourself where you can reflect or meditate or just, be able to kind of be more in tune with your physical health, your emotional health, your psychological health. I think those are really important things. And again, being a father, being a husband, being a teacher, being all those things, it's so easy to lose that and not have the time or the desire to just like be like, you know what? I need 5 minutes, I need 10 minutes, I need 30 minutes for me where I can just kind of collect my thoughts, reflect on this, think about that, process these things that have been going on. Um, so simplifying your life, I think, is really, really important as well, because we just live in such a fast-paced world where we're always thinking about what's next, what do I have to do now, and we don't take those times for ourselves. And I think that's also really important.
Most definitely, I certainly agree with that. Like a simple act of kindness can go a long way. Most definitely, I agree. So that on that idea, you mentioned like family, your recent move to Connecticut. Um, how would you say you're grateful for in life?
Well, I mean, I'm very grateful for my family for sure, and that includes my wife, my daughter, my parents. I think for both my wife and I, the past year and a half with COVID, I think we were nervous and a little bit afraid for ourselves. Like we didn't want to get COVID, but we were definitely more concerned about our parents, both my parents and both my wife's parents. They're all in their 70s. I mean, my parents are in good health, and so are my wife's. But you know, just that was something I think that was on our mind a lot. Just how important family is. We want our daughter Riley to grow up in a house where she's surrounded by as many people as possible that love her and care about her. She doesn't have any siblings, so her both sets of grandparents have been hugely important for her in terms of just spending time, walking to school with her, picking her up from school. I mean, both my wife and I work, so we're not always able to get her to school in the morning or pick her up in the afternoon. So just having that support system for both her and us has been great. So I'm really thankful for my family. Um, I'm obviously thankful for my health, just to kind of get through this hard situation unscathed. I'm now fully vaccinated, so I'm feeling much more confident about kind of going back out into the world. And, today just getting the news that the CDC is saying like now fully vaxxed people don't really have to wear masks as much in terms of both indoors and outdoors. Like that's awesome. Like I'm so happy to see that. So I'm thankful for my health. Um, I'm thankful for my neighborhood, just living where I am now. Like I really get a sense that I even with all the COVID complications, I've been able to connect very well with my neighbors. My neighbors across the street have two kids my daughter's age, so they've been, getting along great. And I just think for me, where I am right now, I feel a tremendous sense of community and belonging. Um, again, for me, that's important. I don't do as well on my own. I don't do as well when I'm by myself, when I'm isolated. I mean, again, I want time for myself when it's necessary, but I'm definitely a social being. I'm someone who does so much better when I'm connecting with other people. And I've really felt that from just the people in our neighborhood, and that's been fantastic. So I'm really happy about that. So family, health, just my community, obviously my job, I'm thankful for, just seeing how many people were affected by the pandemic in terms of being furloughed or losing their jobs. It's been that was really hard to see, and just being thankful that I'm in a position where that was not something I had to go through, or my wife. So um, yeah, those are things that I think have been put into perspective a lot more just because of how things have gone the past year and a half or so with that.
So, if you were to leave something in a time capsule for people to dig up 100 years later, what would you put in there and why?
Now this is a really good question. I was like, I have to come up with a really good answer to this question, um, and I don't know if I have. I'm not sure, but I like my answer, so I'm gonna stick with it. So what I think I would put in a time capsule for someone to dig up 100 years later would be a seed, and there's a couple reasons why I would do that. So, number one, if you were to open up a time capsule and look inside, you just saw this little tiny seed in the time capsule. Number one, you wouldn't necessarily know what it was a seed for or what a seed of. You'd have to plant it, and then you'd have to kind of wait and kind of go through the process of seeing what it would grow and mature into. And I like that idea. There's like a little bit of mystery. There's a little bit of uncertainty involved. You know, um, a time capsule and you see an iPhone, okay, you can figure out what that is in a couple of minutes. It's an iPhone or whatever. And I like the fact that also it's just something natural. I think just I've also tried in the last couple of years to try and connect more with just the natural world and nature, and just being more respectful of this planet that we live on, and how amazing and complex it is. So that's another reason why I think I would choose something associated with the natural world or nature. And in terms of the type of seed I would choose, the past couple of years, and this actually goes back to a trip that I took right before COVID started. I was fortunate enough to take a trip with some students from St. John's Prep to Japan in February of 2020. So while we were there, we were hearing about the things going on in Wuhan. We were hearing things about going on in other parts of Asia and Europe. And then, we got back at the end of February from Japan, and then things really kind of began to blow up and become a lot more global. And obviously I haven't traveled out of the country. I haven't traveled on a plane since then. Um, so while we were there, we had the opportunity to see the very beginning of the cherry blossom season in Japan, which is a big thing. And I think that really had a big impact on me while I was there, just to kind of to understand why Japanese culture and Japanese people are so kind of enamored by the cherry blossoms, and why it's such a big part of their culture. Um, and I've done a lot of I've read several books on the history of cherry blossoms within Japan, and so I would choose the seed of a cherry tree to plant, because that's something that also takes years to grow, and you can kind of have a process of that. And I think that's something that I've tried to also just incorporate into my overall life philosophy. The thing about the cherry blossom in Japan, is that the cherry blossoms, they bloom, but then in a couple of days they're gone. It's a very short little season. And I think what that translates to in terms of like culture and meaning is that our lives are short, right? So, and we have to really appreciate everything we have and kind of live our lives to the fullest, the best that we can, because you never know. You never know when it's going to be over. And that's something I think, again, especially because of the way things have been going the past year and a half or so, that I've really tried to apply in terms of just, taking those opportunities when they come, making the most of them, looking for joy and happiness in those little moments that maybe you would otherwise overlook and not appreciate. So for me, I think the cherry blossom, just the cherry tree, has personally become much more a part of like my overall, life experience these past couple of years since I was in Japan those 2 years ago. So again, that's my answer. I don't know. I don't know if that's a good answer or not, but that's I'm sticking with it. That's my answer for that
It's
question.
a very unique answer because all of our past guests have been like more like object based. You're yeah, like you said before, it's more natural.
Yeah, I mean, I thought about it. I was like, oh, yeah, an iPhone or like I don't know, like a flat screen TV or something that's just like indicative of today. But I don't know. I think there's something like timeless about that. Like it's something that can resonate with people 100 years from now, from 100 years ago, from multiple points in history. And maybe it's just me as a history teacher thinking that way. I don't know. That's just how my brain works. But um, yeah, that's what I would probably leave in the time capsule. The seed of a cherry tree.
It's definitely a beautiful flower, but the wait is always worth it.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
So, is there anything you want to add? Where can our viewers find you on social media?
So I'm actually not on social media. I do have an Instagram and a Facebook account. I wound up getting off of Facebook back in like 2016 during the presidential election. I just felt things were becoming very toxic and very, at least for me, it wasn't something I was enjoying anymore. And then I think once the pandemic hit, I got off Instagram because I just found it was like taking up so much of my time. I would be there scrolling, 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 and my wife would be like, "Hello, hello," and I just found that like I was posting stuff and I enjoyed doing it, but it was also just distracting me from things that I probably should have been doing more of. So again, I still have accounts on both Facebook and Instagram, but I've deleted the apps from my phone and I haven't been on probably in and over a year for Instagram, and now probably 4+ years for Facebook. So I don't really have a big social media presence. I think that again that makes me kind of old and old fashioned. But um, yeah, so if I ever do go back onto Instagram or Facebook, I'll let you guys know, and we can. I don't know, maybe add something to the show or something. But yeah, social media is not something that's really a part of my life right now. But in terms of like adding anything, I want to say thank you, and I really mean this. Like it's been really great to talk with you. I mean, I can't believe it's been now almost an hour that we've been talking. It seems like it's been 15 minutes. I can't believe it's gone on so long. I really enjoyed it, and I wish you guys the best of luck with this. As I said before, this is amazing that you guys are doing this. I hope it goes well. I cannot wait to hear the other interviews and other guests that I mean, again, listening to you when you guys were interviewing Mr. Vanderberg about a month ago, that was so cool to see, and just it was also nice to reconnect with him because I haven't spoke to him in now a couple of years myself since he left St. John's and moved out to Chaminade. But yeah, I just wish you guys the best of luck, and I know you guys are going to do great things with this. So I can't wait to see where it goes.
I really, really appreciate that, Mr. Toronto. Thank you
Thank you,
very
Mr.
much.
Turano.
We've really enjoyed having you also, and it's been a joy reconnecting with you after so many years.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it's really great to see both of you. I mean, I don't want to say you guys look so different from when you were in high school, but like, yeah, I mean, you guys are all grown up. It's crazy. It really, really is. I mean, time flies. It really does. I mean, I
It
can't believe
does.
it's been now 7 years since you were both in high school. So, um, yeah, it's been fantastic. Again, thank you so much for the opportunity to do this.
Of course. So, Mr. Turno, thank you so much for being a part of our time capsule. Thank you to our viewers for watching, and please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Tune in again next week to meet another amazing addition to our time capsule. See you next time.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.